Hello, everybody. My name is Danielle Love, and this is another amazing episode of the Real Life Sex Chat Show, where we love to discuss the sovereignty that we all have over creating the types of relationships and ways in which we relate to sexuality in our own lives, and also to encourage people to release judgment about the ways in which people do that and maybe inspire others to kind of take a more active role in kind of kicking the traditional things to the side if that doesn't work for them. So I'm going to read you Alexis's bio, and then we're going to get right into all of her good stuff. So Alexis Logan is the founder of SoulFreq, which I love the name of that, and Sensual Mischief. She is a multi-passionate entrepreneur who loves to explore the intersectionality of our spirituality and soul calling with our humanity to live in alignment with who we truly are. With a background in psychology, social work, and energy healing, she holds a deep transformational space for clients to release what holds them back, move toward the version of themselves they desire to be, and accelerate their goals and personal fulfillment. So Alexis, I cannot thank you enough for being here with me today. I'm just going to say it out here so whoever's watching later, this is Alexis's birthday. So happy birthday to Alexis.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. How are you feeling today?
Great. I started off with a great slow morning, a morning ritual. I already had a bath for the day. I was
Treating yourself
really great start.
Yes, treat yourself like the goddess you are. I love that. So let's just kind of get back, we were saying off air, like to the origin story, because, we're both here kind of in this kind of liberated, expressive, energetic sexuality, all of that. But we always say that that doesn't always come right out of the bat. Like we have to work towards that. So how was this version of Alexis Logan kind of brought into the world, and SoulFreq and Sensual Mischief, and what's the origin story of that?
That's a great question. So I grew up not this, not this at all. I was born, to awesome, high achieving parents who they were, definitely climbing that regular life. You grow up, you get married, you have your children, you work your job for 30 years, you retire, that is that story. And so I sort of came along and was a creative child. I thought differently. I explored different things. And I also went to Catholic school. So anyone who's like, oh, you went to Catholic school, they're like, oh, you went to Catholic school. And I'm like, you got that right, Not the Catholic school is bad, but apparently, at least I didn't know until I first entered Catholic high school. I was like, these people over here are wild, but we're supposed to be Catholic over here. Like, what is happening?
Oh, wow. I see. And so I'm Jewish, and I didn't go to any denominational school, so I don't really know anything about what goes on at Catholic school. So this is news to me. So, yes.
Yes. And that was my first sort of experience into, like, I was always a good girl. I was always very straight laced. I had, my body definitely developed early. So I was, 14, 15, walking around with the body of like a 20, 25-year-old. And people used to mistake me for being older all the time. And so I found it to be very disconcerting. I was like, oh, my body, I don't know. And so I started the journey to being more comfortable with that aspect of myself. It didn't really start until college because I actually got sick. I have an autoimmune situation, and I had to it's the first time I had to tend to my body and like what it means to be in my body. And, when you're carrying all that lovely religious shame about sexuality and all that stuff, it gives you the experience of like, okay, let me sort of connect and tend to. I actually started out as a social worker working in child protective services. A lot of people don't know that. People who see me now versus then are like, whoa, what did you go through? And in 2009, I had already started thinking about like, what is my life after social work? Because 3-4 years in, you see everything and you're like, oh, this is not for me. And I got really interested in health coaching. And so that was sort of my first expression outside of that world. And what I would not realize is how I became this journey now, because my father actually died of a heart attack in 2009 during that summer. And I had a wake up call of like, Alexis, we are not working until, 30, like you have to live your life. You have been living for everyone else. I did not realize at the time, like how much we live for our parents and like within our parents' vision of us. And I always felt stunted. I always felt very constricted by that. So after his passing, I felt like the floodgates just opened and my spiritual gifts evolved after that. My mom started doing like Reiki circles and I got involved in that. I did shamanic journey. I learned Akashic records and I actually put it together into a business. So I started out health coaching and then come to find out, I was like, why aren't people doing the things that I asked them to do when we're health coaching? Like, what is that about, right? And that sort of deep dive, I took a deep dive into psychology and energy work and just never looked back. Yeah. So I created a program called Heal Your Body Story. And that was all, it's the first thing about like working with women around like, why are you really trying to lose weight? And is it your perception that's the problem? Or there are things that are just sort of stuck in the body that need to be released that you can release the weight, right? And so that was my first sort of introduction into how we are seeing ourselves. So I saw this study. It was a study that came out around that time. I think I remember what outlet highlighted it, that women tend to see themselves size-wise 2 to 3 sizes bigger than what they actually are when they look in the mirror.
Yes.
And so for me, like that was also another massive awakening into like, what is going on with me and, you know, in my body and whatnot. And then as I was sort of stepping out and trying to find myself in this period of time, I got pregnant with my son, who's now 8. And that was a whole host of interesting situations of like, I never thought I would ever have a child. Now I'm pregnant. And again, connecting with my body and going, okay, what is happening within me? What's happening within here? And how does this affect and or stun the expression that I'm wanting to live? Because, you know, we go through, sometimes things are planned, he was not planned. So there's a whole other chain pieces that come out of that and going, okay, this is not the end of my life. This is not the end of my world. So let's, you know, move forward. And I remember sitting down with my ex and with my mom going, look, I'm having this child, but this is not changing my life. Okay. So y'all need to support me as I grow these businesses. And so, which I'm pretty sure that was not the interaction they thought they were having. And then from there, I've always had this fascination, like, how can we be more soul? Because that's always been my goal. I never fully realized it probably until that time of like, I want to live my life. I want to live what calls to me. And I want to be unapologetic about that. And so going through those experiences really forced me to look at myself. Like, okay, who are you being? Who are you choosing to be? And are you letting your outside circumstances dictate what you decide who you decide you're going to be? So I ended up moving in with my ex, and we were together 5 years. And I realized probably about halfway through that his vision of what a relationship was and my vision of a relationship was completely different. And I went through there like, let's think about going to therapy. Let's think about like working through this. And he wasn't really open to it. And so as I realized that he wasn't open to it, I felt sort of like that sense that not like I don't want to say like soul dying, but like you're disconnecting and like you're sort of dying on the inside because your expression is stunted, right? Like you're not being who you are. You're trying to keep something together. And we would go periods of time, you know, without having sex, without having like any connection. And so it led to a lot of frustration. And I did end up having a short affair as a result of that. And then going, I'm not doing this. Like, I'm not doing this.
Right.
And so the day before I was going to come clean with him about everything, he actually confronted me. And that was the beginning of, well, the end of our relationship, but the beginning of me owning, like, what do I actually need to thrive in relationship? And looking at things that I didn't think were important, right? Because you start to go into different relationships, you're like, this is what's really important to me. This is who I am, right? And I realized there's a bit of a divide between what I was saying versus what I was yearning for. And that opened a lane for me to say, what is it you truly desire? And are you willing to, number one, be very clear that this is what you desire and not settle for less? Because I'm a team player. Like I will, if we're going to, I deep dive into stuff. If we're going to go through stuff, I'm going to hash it out. We're going to go to therapy. Like I will do the work, right? But if you don't have partnership in that, it doesn't work.
Right.
So with that lane opening, I don't know, randomly, I just got this download. I started writing erotica. I started writing what I created called Sex Goddess Confessions, which were confessions written Catholic confession style. So
oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Of like my sexual escapades, but in celebration of sex. And like, man, like why wasn't I taught this? This is amazing, you know, like that celebration aspect of it. And so that actually is housed under Sensual Mischief, but you know, that's the whole story of SoulFreq was definitely started from the health coaching, but from the opening that lane between us, and engaging with that erotic side, engaging with pleasure, engaging with how I want to have sex and how often I want to have sex, and being able to flow with that, right? That sort of gave birth to Sensual Mischief, and it was just an exploration of that's where it started. And then from there, after my ex and I separated, I had to find myself again, you know, like what parts had I released of myself or didn't fight for to be in that relationship that I wanted to reclaim. And so that actually led to me engaging in a little bit of sugar dating and looking at alternative relationships. And so from there, that was a whole other explanation out there. So we definitely can get into if you'd like.
Yeah.
But that exploring that, and a lot of people have like a negative view of sugar dating, or you're doing this, and it's money and all that. I'm like, it is so much more than that. Like,
you have, like, a lot of people have a lot of opinions about things that they have absolutely zero lived experience with, but they definitely want to be spouting out what they think it is. So I don't know anything really other than what it is, but I'm sitting here just like, yeah, I want to know more. Yeah, of course I want to know more. And just to say, because Alexis and I have never spoken prior to this, I feel like I am so connected to you. Like every single thing that you said, almost I've experienced. I was extremely mature, very, very early, like C cups by the time I was 11. I lived with an autoimmune disease. My father died of a heart attack. I mean, like, you're just saying these things and I'm like, what? Like, how is this even possible? Like, there's like, we don't know each other's story, but you're literally like saying so many things, but also really wanting to touch back on how many women are probably living exactly or a very similar situation where you were prior to separating from your partner at the time, where you're quieting or not honoring big aspects of your sacred sexual energy, right? Like you're saying, I'm in this partnership. This is not what my partner is feeling. And so in order to kind of maintain the peace or whatever you want to call it, you just kind of mute that part of yourself. But in doing so, the internal kind of contradictory back and forth is just so loud. And I had a very similar experience prior to meeting my husband, where I was in a 4-year relationship. And at the very end of the relationship, I wanted to start, my husband and I have an ethical non-monogamous relationship. We've had it for 15 years. And I even just wanted to bring a girl in with my previous, and he said, well, that's cheating, this and that. And I felt so stunted and so kind of denied that I also had a brief affair right towards the end of the relationship. But just like you, I was like, oh, this is so out of alignment, like for how I feel. And I need to, and then the breaking up. And then like 8 months later, I found my husband, who is also a freak like me. And so it was perfect timing, but it's just all the commonalities there are just so interesting. And so, yeah, speak more about the exploration of the sugar dating. So like, and which way did it go? Like, I don't know. How does that work? What are the age differentials that like qualify it as that? Yes, please educate me and the rest of the folks out there.
So actually I have to credit my brother-in-law for this. He probably not probably put it out there, I'm gonna put him out there like that, because he said, you know, when I started dating again, he's like, Alexis, you're just so amazing. You're lovely. I just feel like you should get something out of men experiencing you dating. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he shared a story of one of his friends, and she was out, you know, engaging in sugar dating, and he was like, there's this website, and she was on it, and this guy picked her up in a Lamborghini, and they went out, and he treated her to like a 5-star experience at this amazing hotel, and I was like, what? here in DC, what? Like, is this like a thing, right? So I decided I was going to let me just create a profile on this website and see what happens. So I did, and then I got flooded with people trying to talk to me. I knew nothing. I had to reach out to a friend who had been sugar dating for like 20 years. And I said, I need you to teach me. Like, I realized what I stumbled into. I realized you used to do this and I need help. So how does this
Teach
happen?
me.
Teach me. And so I so appreciated her because she's like, Alexis, sugar dating is like this massive like field of experiences. You hear what people say about, it's sex work. You hear people saying it's not sex work. You hear people saying, oh, it's just very transactional. It's cold. And you hear stories about people who met each other and, got married. And so she basically said, choose your own adventure. What do you really need from these experiences? And what do you want from these experiences? And so that sort of led to that exploration, because in the sugar dating world, I mean, I appreciate it because all your conversations that you don't have in regular dating happen up front usually and in the first date. So imagine like you're going to dinner with someone and they're asking you like, who are you? What do you want? How open are you sexually to these things? Like those conversations happen. Like you talk about it, you're texting or whatever, have phone calls before you meet your first time, and then you're really talking about like what
sounds so liberating
out of this.
It does. To me at least. Yeah, like it sounds liberating. Like thank God we don't have to like dance around this topic that we're both thinking about. Like yes.
And so what does that look like, and how often are we going to meet? And then depending upon what other exchanges are a part of that, the financial piece, asking for, okay, here's how much money I would like, a month or per meet. And, when you're sugar dating, you ultimately want an allowance. So they're giving you an X amount of dollars, per month for whatever you want to do that with, right? And other people, like some women just want handbags. Other women want clothes. I'm not a shopper. So I was like, please don't take me shopping, because that's, that is the kiss of death.
I'm the same way. I'd be like, no, I'll just take the money. Yeah.
And then let's go explore the world, right? So I had a lot of alternative relationships within that space. And it was just so liberating. Like, there's one person I met, and he wanted to go to charity balls. And so that's what we did. And I was, I always used to joke, I'm educated arm candy, right? But I got to go places that I would not have had access to. There's so many like political charity balls. I got to go see Stacey Abrams speak in person.
That's worth it all in itself. Oh my God. Wow. That is exciting.
So accompany him and sort of walking through his world. And then, I also met guys who were married, whose wives knew that they were doing this and approved of it because, wife is going through menopause. That's a whole other changes that happen, and your sex life changes, and it's like, I don't want you to suffer because I'm doing this. And yes, we can connect, but if there are other things that you need to experience or want to experience, go out and do it. So I met husbands who were in that situation, and then there were also the ones who were like, hey, I'm gonna put up front, like I'm married and she doesn't know, and like I just I've got to take care of this, right? So, and just exploring all of that. And then I met a musician, and he and I have been together ever since. That's how our relationship started. And he's been really amazing. And he's probably the most open person that I know and have ever dated. I mean, let me think about it. I think about like the quality of our conversations, our spiritual connection, like the things that I have wanted to talk about and to have this open space, in our relationship. I have that, right? And so that was really the beauty of meeting him. And I would never have met him any other way. Like our paths would never have crossed like any other way whatsoever. And we've had our tumultuous ups and downs with being open and, you know, ethically non-monogamous, and like, what does that look like, and sort of rules of the road for that. Because, you know, I had the experience of I'm dating around and doing my thing, but I'm single doing my thing, right? Yeah. But when you're in a relationship with someone and you're like, okay, like I haven't navigated what this exactly looks like, and sort of getting off that relationship escalator and looking at what does it mean to be with someone who may also be engaging with other people while you are together.
Yeah, and so I talk about that too.
That's been an adventure.
And I try to tell people specifically about that is that as much as you try to plan ahead and set these, I don't love the word rules. That's just me, because rules make me feel like very constricted. So I say they're agreements. But the thing is that experientially, you can say this, that, and the other thing, but until you actually, as a couple, go through the experience, even if it's just one of the people having the experience, obviously, if you're in relationship with somebody, you're both having that experience to some extent. You can't really always predict the ways in which you might feel or the emotions that might arise. And so I always tell people, you know, do your best to make these agreements ahead of time, and both also leave room for growth and other things to come in, because you just don't know. And I just love hearing that you already had that knowledge before you started with that. It sounded like you're like, I don't know what this is going to be like. And so is that how you guys still are now? Or like, what is the status now? Or
now we are still open and still having conversation about what that actually looks like. I mean, don't get me wrong, like it was hard. And there were some trauma pieces that came as a result of that.
But you get to feel them when they come up, right?
Yeah, you feel them when they come up. And then, but the one thing I have to say that I think that we don't always accommodate for, but need to, is understanding that when we are engaging, or we are, both partners are like, hey, I want to try this out, as that maintaining the space of that there may be hurt. There's going to be hurt that comes along with that. And you're not really able to account for it before it happens. But when it does, to take the pause and sit with that person regarding that and like really go through that. Not taking on responsibility, but still going, oh man, I didn't even consider that. I'm sorry. Like, how can I do this better next time? Or, you know, maybe we need to take a pause so you can, you know, process that. And I think, because those were a couple situations that did come up that I do think impacted where we are now, that if they had been handled differently in the past, probably would have changed a couple of responses, I know on my part, with him. And so I say that because you just don't know, like, people's history. I mean, we think we know people, but then like trauma pieces come up from the past, or you're like, oh, I thought you had more emotional awareness or situational awareness to those things. And so you start seeing the blind sides to some things that like something that matters to you may not have mattered to the other person, right? And so I think the biggest like thing is like, remain open. Like, those are the situations where you feel like oh, I'm so embarrassed I offended you or something like that. And we want to like shrink in and close down. It's like, no, you've got to stay open to the experience and let it be, and let those situations, you know, play out as they are without trying to control or to make it better initially, but just like really allow for like the expression.
I agree.
And so,
And I think too, that's also a big part of at least my relationship is a concept. It's a word. It's called compersion. And I've talked about it a million times. And really what it is at the core is the opposite of jealousy. It's you as an individual feeling genuinely excitable joy for the other person in your relationship having pleasure that may or may not have anything to do with you, right? So like they're, you know, and having, so what you said about letting that hurt be and to examine it and to sit with it, I agree wholeheartedly. And I think that when you have that experience of the hurt, which of course it has happened in my relationship as well, but knowing that each person is coming from that place of compersion, knowing that each person genuinely has the other person's joy and fun and play and their feeling good about things. That's what we want for each other, knowing that that's the essence of the exchange. I think, at least for me and for the people that I've worked with and helping them kind of navigate, knowing that that's the energy that's at the foundation of the interaction allows that hurt to be witnessed in a more compassionate way versus, you know, if you don't discuss where that's coming from first and you just think, oh, well, this person clearly doesn't care about me, when you know that they do, but it's just a miscommunication. So I just think that's definitely so important to beforehand. Yeah.
Do, because otherwise it becomes forced conversion.
Yeah. That's not real. Yeah.
And you're like, why aren't you happy for what you're, sir, like I am still processing myself right now. I can't even think to be happy for you. Like I'm still over here and you just like moved on. And I'm like, oh, no.
No, we need time. We need time. Yeah, absolutely. So interesting though, to see the dynamics though. Can I ask another question about the sugar dating? Is there an accepted age difference where it then becomes called that's accepted within the sugar dating community? What is that setup look like? What are the rules or the agreements in there?
So I don't think, it's my humble opinion. Okay. I mean, I don't know. In my experience, I don't believe that sugar dating actually has to have an age, because sugar dating essentially is if someone is paying for things for you or paying you for you know, doing stuff for you, things like that. I think that's a sugar relationship.
Okay.
It is.
I like it.
So, however, within that, and I'm glad you asked about the age question, is that I do think that there are certain ages that work well in sugar dating. And I've tested this out with not only with myself, but with a couple of girlfriends and other people that I have mentored and, you know, taught in sugar dating. Is that there is, and I don't remember the mathematician's name, but there was a French mathematician who did a calculation on, I love it, leave it to the French, who came up with like the perfect age for someone's mistress. Okay. Mm-hmm. So it's usually half the guy's age plus 7 years. So if someone is 40, his ideal sugar baby is 27, right? Or if you're in your 50s, your ideal, you know, early 50s, your ideal sugar baby is, you know, between like 32 to 30, you know, 6, 7 in there, depending upon, you know, what that is. And I've actually found it to be true. I was messing around. You know, I was like, I'm going to test this and see, you know, if I just look at guys with this age period, like what is my response going to get? And it actually was really, really good. It just, I don't even know how he found it, but it seems to work really, really well. Again, age does not play into this, but in terms of the personality, temperament you're looking for, level of generosity, maturity, you know, and let's just think about it. Guys 50s and older have probably been at least married at least once. They already have grown kids. They have more history. There's more relationship experience. And as a result of what they've been through, they are looking for, you know, genuine connection.
And they know what they're looking for versus a lot of men who just don't, they think they know what they're looking for. And it's the same for women too, just to be clear. It's not like I'm being, like, we think you know what you're looking for, but then you get it and you're like, oh, this isn't what it was. But after all that experience, that it's probably just much easier. It's just easy. Yeah. To be in
and
that.
Think about it, because like they're also through their milestones of life. Like they went out and slayed it in the workspace. Like, you know, like they went out and did all the things. They've had all the experiences and now they're getting into, okay, but what do I really want? Guys in their 40s, they're still out there, still slinging it. And they're still thinking about, you know, their college days. So they're trying to go after the co-ed. And it makes sense. It makes sense. Like someone who, you know, is in his 40s may not necessarily, I mean, it's not that it never happened. I've met guys, you know, in their 40s as well, but they're usually chasing after the women in like their 20s because they, you know, they've got to know I'm still the man. in some ways, right? So, and that's not, and I don't think that's like judge anyone or anything like that.
No.
But like, in general, what I've seen out there.
It's what we've both
like,
seen.
The sentiment.
Yeah, for sure. I will second that. Yes.
So I think that that plays into it as well. And like I said, this is like this idea, like, yes, you can approach sugaring from a place of sex work. And depending upon the transaction and the level of relationship you have with a person, it can look like that.
Sure.
If that's what you want it to look like. Right. For me, I sort of took it, this is like the entrepreneur in me, by the way. So like, I'm about to share, this is the entrepreneur in me, was like, I'm getting interactions with guys who are like C-suite level, making anywhere from like $500,000 to millions and millions each year. Like they're investors or they're in venture capital. There's more to the money in the situations. Like I want to learn things from you and I don't necessarily have access to you in any other way. So it's not necessarily just about, oh, I'm just trying to get paid like $5,000 a month or whatever. No, like there's, like I said, your experience and everyone who's out there, I mean, it's a wide open board. And that's just, I'm just talking like career-wise, but even sexually, there are guys, everyone has different sexual preferences. And if there's an area that you wanted to explore, there are guys out there who are like, yeah, I'm looking for someone who's newer to BDSM or like this particular type of kink or, wants to travel. Like I'm going to be traveling for the next 6 months. Who wants to come with me while I'm traveling for the next 6 months? Like there's so many different opportunities. And then we always narrow it down to, oh, she's just getting paid to date him. And obviously since she's considered younger, that guy probably pays her to date. Like it's, it's so much more than that.
And that's how I think so many ways in which we have the opportunity to express ourselves sexually now, and even more so now than ever, that society at large really desperately wants to put this like very confined label-y box around it. Well, she's doing this, therefore she is this. And even he or they, whatever the pronouns are, it's just a judgmental energy overall. Of course, I've seen it progress over the years, but generally speaking, I talk about being in an open relationship. I talk about it openly, and, to see from 10 years of being a health and wellness and life coach to kind of switching over and really just talking outwardly about sex as I started doing this year, just to see the people, some of women who may be a little bit older than me, who maybe I had coached their children or something, and they're like, oh my God, this woman was coaching my child. I literally changed your child's trajectory in life. Not me, but I guided that person to do that. And now they're living their best life. But meanwhile, I can still see that tinge of like, oh, she's a heathen. Oh, damn. Yeah. But like, it's just so, and that's why I'm so excited about having these chats, just generally for me, because it's uplifting to be in the energy of other women who feel the same way and act the same way and express themselves, but also for the people that are watching these, which are hundreds at this point, just to shed that light on, because the people who are this, if this goes out to my email community list, these are folks that came in looking for diabetes advice. But a lot of them have been with me for 10 years and they're like, oh, I know her. I have enough trust in her and her consistency where now I can listen to her talking about ethical non-monogamy and BDSM and sugar dating and kink and, all these other things. So it's really nice to have that. But overall, unfortunately, that energy still is like, oh, well, sugar dating, sex work, you're a hooker. And even if that was the case, it's like, still the whole point I'm having here is release the judgment. Sex work is the original work. Like it's the original work that existed. That's the original. I mean, I think people should be able to do whatever they would like to do with their bodies. And if that's making money, to me, it's just the same question about like homosexuality. What's the difference to you if this is what I'm doing with my body? But then we get to see what's happening in Texas nowadays. And then we're going down a whole other rabbit hole where society at large, mostly old white men, if I'm going to be really honest about it, can't stand women having sovereignty over their own bodies. It's somehow a threat to them. I don't understand it, but I see it happening. So it's mind-boggling, but
I have a theory about that though.
Yes, please. Tell me about it.
So I've been looking at I'm like, there has to be a larger conversation. No, do I think it's about control? Yes. Do I think religion plays a huge part of it? Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But I also think those are like the surface levels. But when you look at deeper levels, you start to scratch your head and go, So I never started, I don't even know how I started to get on this topic, but I started paying attention. There was a lot of articles, probably within the last 18 months, but it was sort of buried with other news articles where there are a lot of people who were concerned about the growth rate in different countries. And so they were looking at, how fast the population was aging versus how fast the population was reproducing, and how control around the world would change based on population size. And so I started looking at that, and I'm like, these men aren't really concerned really about, they want to spout this because it's an easy agenda for them to get votes. It's an easy agenda for certain communities to vote for their person because they are anti-abortion. We got to make sure it's about the kids, even though you care about the kids until they're born.
Until they're born, yeah, then you don't care at all.
There's nothing else that, right?
Right.
But they're there for the numbers. And I was thinking about what the reproduction rate is for different races in the U.S. And when you look at those numbers, I was like, that's why you're threatened, because your numbers are dwindling, and you're like, where is the power going to come from? Communities of color are reproducing faster than white communities. And then what does that look like in terms of how you maintain your power?
Wow. Well, for me, it can't happen fast enough because please let this population grow and let these old white men get off. I mean, because I just saw a meme the other day, and I'm going to butcher it, but it's essentially like, that uniquely American feeling of having 9 people defend a constitution that was made up by slavers and their allies, and like 2 of the people on that 9 are like rapists. And that's what it is. That's legitimately what's happening in this country right now. And I'm not like some anti-American person, but the reality of it is like, that's just the way that we live, and people are just fighting so hard to defend this. I mean, outdated would be just a ridiculously not strong enough term, but it's just, that's a very interesting theory, and it makes a ton of sense. And I'm here for it.
Yeah, because our legislatures, if we look at state level and also at the federal level, they don't look like representative of the population percentages. So, that's like, you're like, okay, that's really why you're threatened, because if there's not enough of you in the future, like, then who's going to be making decisions for this country?
Meanwhile,
they're running this country.
Yeah, right. So interesting. My goodness. Huh. Who would have thought we would go from sugar dating and ethical non-monogamy to why the politicians are acting the fools that they are? It's all
interrelated. I also wanted to make a point, just because, people focus on sex, and I ran into this, I remember when I first told my mom that I was going to be sugar dating. She was like, you're going to do what? Alexis, I didn't pay for all of your schooling, and you didn't pay for your master's degree in social work for you to go out there and start slinging whatever. And I was like, whoa, Mom, what are you talking about, right? And so I love how, we somehow equate that if you are overly focused on sex and sexuality, that somehow your IQ has dropped.
Yeah, you're not smart, right?
And you're not smart at all.
Yeah. Well, I think you and I, at least in this container, can say that. I mean, I graduated in the top 20 of my class out of high school. I had 4.0 grade point average in college. And in fact, like, I always found traditional learning fairly annoying and not super helpful. I would say the majority of the learning that's actually fueled and informed the ways in which I coach people was from life, my experiences in life versus the degrees that I got from college. I'm not telling people not to go to college, but I am saying that, like, follow your heart.
Yeah,
again, that's another traditional paradigm that I don't think people realize is not absolutely necessary for them to, like, fully live out their true innate desires, the things that they feel are the ways in which they're meant to express themselves on this earth. A college education isn't necessarily the foundational stone for that. I'm sure it can fit in. But a lot of people go there, like you said, like this traditional paradigm. You go to school, you go to college, you get married, you have children, you get a job, you stay there. Like that, to me, that's fairly dead at this point. I mean, it just doesn't really work out that way anymore. So
you're right, it doesn't. And, I think there's also like this space where it's, I will have to tell you, because of course I did all this, like I checked the boxes. I was like you, to top 20 in high school, degrees upon degrees for things, right? But I have to say the best education that I have received has been exploring my relationships and exploring myself relationally. Because at the end of the day, you know, you're not meeting when you meet people on the street, you're not meeting their degrees, you're meeting people. You're meeting people and their emotions and their humanity, and, you know, learning how to interrelate with that. And I can say that's probably been the biggest gift of exploring the relationships, is like, I'm just so adept, like, at just connecting with people and just like seeing people and like allowing for expression.
Yes, I'm the same way. What are your, I know what your sun sign is because I know today's your birthday, but what are your moon and rising issues?
My moon is Scorpio and my rising is Aquarius.
Okay. I'm Scorpio moon and Scorpio rising. So I think I felt, because the Scorpio moon is in the body, and I feel that connection to you. I'm just like, we're very much similar in a lot of ways. That's very fun.
Yeah, people still think about it. They're like, so you're a Libra, but you rise in Aquarius, but your moon is a Scorpio. And I was like, yes, please do not cross me.
I am a complex person.
Libra is also always about balance, but once you hit that moon part, she don't care.
Nope. That is so funny. I love this. Okay, so I could definitely talk to you endlessly, but for the sake of, you know, people watching this and you know, time and whatnot, are there any other things or pieces of wisdom or experience that you'd like to share, things that you've been thinking about while we've been talking that you're like, hey, I wanted to touch on that before we kind of bring it around to a close?
Take the dive. You know, life is short. You know, after my father died, on his side of the family, 1 to 2 people, it was almost like it started this cascade. 1 to 2 people on his side of the family died every single year for like 5 years straight. And it just reminded me that life is short. We don't know how much time ultimately that we do have. And how do you really want to live your life? And not just live your life as in the environment and the accoutrements and the material things, but how do you want to be loved?
Energetic.
You know, how do you want to experience love? How do you want to experience sex and fun and all of that? And be intentional about it. Sometimes I think, you know, we have this perception that when it comes to love, it's like some sort of like roulette where we're like, we get what we get. And, you know, that's sort of the end of the story. And it's not. And I think the more that we are very clear about how we want to be loved, how we enjoy being loved, how we enjoy being treated in a relationship, and we don't settle for less in those areas, life becomes a lot more free and enjoyable. And that's really like my highest hope for people in general, and all the work I do between SoulFreq and Sensual Mischief, right? Is to be who you are, but also just be intentional about how you want to be treated and what actually feeds you and what nourishes you. Because I see so many people walking around with just soul loss or soul trauma, just as a result of, you know, being in situations that don't really feed them. And we can choose out of that. We can change that trajectory. It's not easy. I'm not going to tell you that it's going to be fun or easy or just like, you know, unicorn farts and like sparkles and everything, right? But in the end, it's worth it. Like when I see who I am now, and I wonder what would happen if I had stayed in that past relationship, I'm pretty sure I probably would be very dark. Like I just, you know, just energetically, it would just be going throughout the day, being mom, doing the things, harboring resentment, probably have worse symptoms from my autoimmune. Yeah. Just trying to make it through the day so I can get up for the next day. And probably even have other symptoms or contracted like other illnesses as a result of that. And I don't think we realize like how much that serotonin, like happy and dopamine, like happiness factors are so important for the wellness of our bodies and our mindset and our mental health. And I think there are other ways of living. And of course, people are going to have their opinions about it, but that's boundary. That's learning boundaries. That's learning how to be settled within yourself so you can go out and do the things and be the things that you want to be. And take the dive because it's worth it. It's worth it.
I could not agree more. And I was going to say, if anybody out there just takes one thing from this, Alexis said, and I agree, give yourself the gift of sovereignty. And I mean, not to just throw that word around, but in order to do the things that you said, which is because a lot of people don't know the ways they like to love and be loved because they just, inserted themselves into this like cookie cutter thing that the world says is what's right. And so they've never even given themselves the chance to explore, to like have the experiential living experience to say, oh, this does feel good for me. This does feel freeing for me. So yes, give yourself that gift of exploration. There are plenty of ways to do it. But everybody, I agree, should take that dive. It's a deep inner dive. But like you said, the liberation that comes with it. And it's not like, I would almost like to say, well, it's not like it's like this like one and done process, like, or I'm going to start here and end here. Like, no, once you're in it forever. Like, right? Because once you realize the depths of yourself, there's always another level to go to. But it's once you get to a certain level, probably here, you're like, okay, well, I know this initiation, this like life, death, rebirth, all of these processes are kind of always ongoing. And yeah, like let that happen. Let that be for yourself. It's such a gift. Yeah. And this, for me, this conversation has been a huge gift. So thank you. Genuinely, it's your birthday, but you're giving me a gift. So thank you for that. Okay. So yeah, really everyone out there, I hope you enjoyed this. And thank you so much, Alexis, for sharing all of your experiences and your wisdom. I feel like we could have a whole other conversation about being in your body, like, because that's something that we touched on multiple, but like, we'll see, maybe we'll talk about that another time.
Definitely.
Yeah, because that's a whole other thing that I'm very passionate about, being in love with your body, no matter what your autoimmunity or your disease or not disease or your physical weight or all of these, it doesn't matter. All of that is, all these labels just tell us that we're worth less than we are actually worth. So that's a whole other conversation that I'm already thinking about. So I hope everybody out there enjoyed this conversation, and I hope to see you on the next episode of Real Life Sex. And thank you so much, Alexis, for joining me today.
Thank you.